What's up guys, Acerthorn here, and today I'm announcing a new series for the channel. I haven't gone balls deep into a retrospective series in a long time, so I'm hoping to change that. This is the Dragon Ball retrospective series, and as the title suggests, this is going to be a deep dive into, of course, the Brady Bunch. Okay, it's a deep dive into Dragon Ball. Now, if you were to ask me why I'm doing this series, I would say, because why not? But, if you were to ask me on a deeper level, to put it simply, I love Dragon Ball. I grew up watching this show, and it's a series I hold near and dear to my heart. But, as is the case with many of our favorite things from our childhood, once you've watched the series for the 500th time, the cracks in the armor start to show, and for a pedantic know-it-all like myself, when I notice the cracks, I get the irresistible urge to point them out, an urge made even stronger when I wake up one random day and realize, hey, I've got a YouTube channel, isn't that something? But there's also another reason I've decided to do this series. For over a decade now, a YouTuber named Mr. Fusion, who I think named himself after the futuristic fuel source from the Back to the Future movies, but I'm not entirely certain, has been doing a series on this channel called Dragon Ball Dissection. And it is fucking brilliant. Unfortunately, his review of the main series has since come to a close, so I've decided to follow in his footsteps and make this in-depth discussion series of a show that I hold near and dear to my heart. Now, I want to take a moment to explain in depth what this series will and won't cover. First of all, this is going to be a retrospective series of the show I grew up watching. In other words, the Funimation dub of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and yes, even Dragon Ball GT. This includes dual coverages of the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z, the one scored by Shuki Levy and Ron Wasserman, alongside the lengthier Funimation dub that came out years later. Yes, I'll be covering that dub too, the one that was all another dimension and home for infinite losers. After all, this is a retrospective of the show I grew up with, and since I grew up with that dub, that means it's going to be covered. Furthermore, that means that I will be covering Dragon Ball GT. Since I did grow up watching that show, albeit as a teenager, that means it's included in this series, so that should come as no surprise to any of you. However, what may come as a surprise is, yes, I'm actually looking forward to covering it. That won't happen for at least a few years, since I still need to get the Pilaf through Majin Buu sagas out of the way first, but I actually expect to have a good time reviewing that series and its 4 sagas. In my opinion, GT is one of the most underrated pieces of Dragon Ball memorabilia in the entire franchise. Dragon Ball Evolution, that movie sucked ass. Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu, that game sucked ass. But Dragon Ball GT? I will die on the hill that this is a severely underrated and quite enjoyable show, and a very worthy addition to the Dragon Ball family. Let me put it this way. Imagine a family portrait in a family reunion where Uncle Phil is always in the very back, and he's never allowed to have any more than the bare minimum interactions with the family. You eventually find out that the reason for this is because, years before you were born, Uncle Phil was wrongfully arrested over allegations that he had molested one of his nieces. However, even though his name was ultimately cleared and new evidence surfaced that definitively proved he didn't do it, everyone in the family still treats him like a creep because that's easier than just admitting they were all wrong and apologizing. Well, in my opinion, Dragon Ball GT is the Uncle Phil of the Dragon Ball family. Oh yeah, I went there! Come at me, bro! In addition to the Funimation dub being the version I grew up with, I also believe that it is, quite simply, better than the Japanese version. And I don't simply mean the voice acting or the score. I strongly prefer those too, but I understand that's almost completely subjective. But no, I'm talking about how the Funimation dub objectively is better at telling the story than the Japanese version is. Sure, there are some instances where the Japanese version is better, and I will give credit to those moments when they arise. But the instances where the dub outperforms the Japanese version in terms of raw storytelling and emotional connection with the audience far exceeds the few times it comes up short. I'll give you just one example for the time being, and I'll go into more detail later on as the series progresses, but hopefully this one example can help illustrate what I mean. The example I'll use is when Trunks returns to the future and defeats the androids in his timeline. In the Japanese version, he flies up and he kills them. Of course, it's fine for what it is. However, in the Funimation dub, the inclusion of just 4 words makes the moment resonate with audiences far greater. Right before Trunks kills Android 18 in the Funimation dub, and only in the Funimation dub, he says this.
This is for Gohan!
Ooh, fuck yeah. I'll be giving example after example as the series progresses. So that transitions me to my next point in this introduction. If you prefer the Japanese version, more power to you. You're welcome to watch and comment on my videos, but there is one brand of people who can absolutely fuck all the way off. Jap Elitists. I'm not talking about people who prefer the Japanese version over the dub, but those who smugly and arrogantly believe that the Japanese version is the only legitimate version of the show. These are the kinds of people who will smugly correct you anytime you don't pronounce a name or attack the way that Toei Animation pronounced it, and who insist that the Funimation dub, despite being legally licensed, still has no better status in the fandom than fan fiction. Basically, they're bordering on bigots towards dub fans. Let me give you an example. I've mentioned Mr. Fusion a couple of times in this video, and I highly recommend you give his series a look. He's absolutely brilliant. But the Shadow Dragon saga of GT is one of the few times I have to admit he really didn't live up to his normal standards. I spent the entirety of him covering that saga waiting for his normal brilliance to shine through, and all I ever got from him was how the main theme of that saga was the difference between honorable versus dirty fighting. Frankly, the only thing dirty about that whole thing was how dirty I felt listening to such surface-level commentary come from a man I had grown to madly respect for his ability to dig balls deep into the story and find thematic significance in places I didn't even know the Dragon Ball franchise had places. This is especially painful because I know from personal experience that the Shadow Dragon saga has themes and symbolism way more nuanced and deep than what he gives it credit for. My, how the mighty have fallen. However, this rant is about the Jap Elitists. I said all of that in order to set up for the example of the Jap Elitist that I'm about to discuss. See, when Mr. Fusion began discussing the Shadow Dragons, I left this comment on his video, explaining that the Funimation dub managed to mine a metric fuck ton of symbolism out of this saga. A Jap Elitist by the name of Acerthorn swooped in and summarily dismissed my defense of the dub by smugly and arrogantly saying, "Doesn't really warrant that, though. At this point, the dub was just making things up." Wow, what an asshole! So I replied with an equally snarky return volley by asking him, as opposed to Toy Animation, who was telling a true story about something that really happened? He replies by saying, "Why the kindness? You know exactly what I mean."
No, I don't know what you mean.
No, seriously. Why does it not count as long as the dub does it? The dub is licensed by Toei, so why doesn't it count as official? I've seen people give more weight to Team 4 Star's parody series in terms of Dragon Ball lore discussion than I've seen the dub, and it's not officially licensed. Both shows are entirely fictional, so whatever Toei came up with, they necessarily just made it up. So why does the dub get shat on for just making stuff up when Toei is guilty of the exact same thing? They're both aiming to tell an entertaining story for their respective audiences. So if the dub tells the story better than the original, how is that not a W for the dub? You guys act like Funimation's only job should be to translate the show into English. Nothing more, nothing less. Like some interpreter in court whose job is to translate the testimony of a witness who doesn't speak English. Or maybe a deaf witness who can't speak at all. So they need a sign language interpreter to tell us what the witness is saying. You guys act like if Funimation does anything more than that when they dub the show, they're necessarily overstepping their job and doing the fans a disservice. But that isn't even remotely the same thing. When an interpreter translates something in court, it's sinister because it's imperative that the jury knows exactly what the witness is saying. To do anything more than that is to actively sabotage the interests of justice. But in the case of a fictional story, how the fuck is Funimation doing a dirty when they look at the egregiously unrealized opportunity that was the Shadow Dragon saga and thought to themselves, you know what? We can do something with that. Why is that so damn sinister? For that matter, do you all conveniently forget that most Dragon Ball fans are already doing the same thing anyway? Specifically, I'm talking about debates that compare the manga to the anime and debate whether certain filler either makes the story better or worse. Seeing Gohan's wilderness training improves the Saiyan saga. All the filler in the Goku vs. Frieza fight, on the other hand, causes the story to drag on and on. The list goes on and on. Nobody argues that the anime somehow doesn't count because at that point Toei is just making stuff up. And yet the dub gets excluded from that exact same discussion, and why? Because it doesn't count? Why doesn't it count? Because fuck you, that's why. However, the king of the smug, arrogant Jap Elitists has to be Geekdom 101. He has over 700,000 subscribers on YouTube as of the time of this writing, so he has quite a bit of influence with which to spread his anti-dub bigotry. His video, The History of Dragon Ball Z Dub vs. Sub for 20 Years, has to be one of the smuggest, most arrogant, most pompous ass displays of anti-dub bigotry I've ever seen. This guy actually believes that if you're a dub fan, you literally don't have the right to make content discussing Dragon Ball lore because you're nothing but a filthy casual. Don't believe me? He literally says it with his own damn lips.
If you are somebody who's only seen the Funimation Dragon Ball Z dub, you have no right to argue with people who have seen it in Japanese, because you're not going to win. You're not going to win. I qualify you as a casual fan.
Fuck you! You say that I'm a filthy casual just because I prefer the dub. Fuck you. Fuck you in the ass. And furthermore, you say that because I'm a filthy casual for preferring the dub, that means I don't have the right to make my own series and argue why I feel the way I feel about the show? Fuck your mother in her ass. Newsflash, you fucking idiot. I'm gonna tell you something you probably aren't used to hearing, but it needs to be said. This is my channel. This channel is my property. That means I can do whatever the hell I want on it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Don't tell me what I can and can't do on my own damn channel. I've said it when people got pissy that I didn't like Fallout New Vegas. I've said it when people threw a temper tantrum over me not liking Dark Souls or Elden Ring, and by God, I'm going to say it here too. Don't tell me what I can and can't do on my own damn channel. And no, I am not required to have watched and consumed literally every version of Japanese and English Dragon Ball media in order to have a valid opinion on the subject. That's just the Dragon Ball equivalent of saying I need to complete a game 100% before I have the right to review it. And I've already debunked that argument multiple times over. So no, Geekdom 101, I'm going to do this series. I'm going to give you my opinions on the series. I'm going to explain why I have these opinions, and there is a 100% chance that you'll decide that the reasons I give are objectively terrible reasons worthy of me being doxxed, harassed, and cyber-stalked, because as far as you're concerned, it's impossible to have a good reason to prefer the dub over the original. And if you've got a problem with any of that, then I defy you to try and stop me. So, now that I've gotten that out of my system, let's get this party started. Right after this video, another video will be published where the Dragon Ball Retrospective series begins in earnest, starting with the saga that started it all, the Pilaf saga. I hope to see everyone there. In the meantime, however, I am Acerthorn, and I will see you guys later.